How's everybody doing this morning?
Good.
Whole house got COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm better now. I think Demetrius is on the way out, and Maurice just went in 2 days ago. So,
Wow.
Awful.
It's still here.
yeah, it's still here. I don't even want to say how I got it because I don't want Shelby to judge me.
Well, my mom got it, so.
Yeah, she didn't go to Six Flags though.
Oh, no, she did not. Although she did come here. Although that was before this. So anyway.
Thank you. Somebody's let me know about the chat. Thanks, Kay. Fix that real quick. Shelby says, Tony.
What you do for your children and yourself.
I don't judge anybody who gets COVID at this point, I think.
Some good COVID news in our house, though. Kira is half vaccinated.
Yay.
Yay.
Which, like, is something we've been looking forward to for years now. So.
Yeah, we were playing the Russian roulette game, I guess, because I was waiting for the new vaccine to come out in the fall. Because, I mean, just like with the flu, every year there's a new vaccine for the flu. People think it's the same flu vaccine. It's not. And so this is really no different. So Maurice has been vaccinated. I was going to wait to get him boosted, but now since we've all been inoculated by accident, I guess we'll get into the next vaccine comes out.
Yeah.
So we might be in these streets without free pass for the next couple of days. But then there's monkeypox.
Monkeypox. Oh my gosh. Has there ever been a serious name for a disease? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's very what's the movie? Rob, what movie am I thinking about? The monkey.
12 monkeys.
The one with the monkeys were like the beginning of the disease, but it had Patrick Dempsey went out in the woods and found a monkey. Yeah.
That Outbreak.
Yeah. I used to like watching movies like that.
Until they started happening in real life.
Yeah.
We should watch the Andromeda Strain today.
Or Contagion.
Too close to home.
Kill off Gwyneth Paltrow in the first 5 minutes.
Hey, yeah, I'm watching this new series on, I guess it's a new series on Apple Plus called Invasion. Check it out. It's pretty good. No, it's what it is. We have this invasion, but like, it's unlike any other invasion movie that I've seen in the fact that the aliens are not really that anthropomorphic. They don't even show up until like the 5th episode. There's a lot of drama and there's a lot of strong women in it, which I love.
That sounds exactly like what I want to watch right now.
Well, it's about that time. Let me stop the share. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to get our liturgy pulled up in just a second. All right, let's see. Let's make sure we know what our roles are. Paula's not going to be with us probably for the rest of the month. So let's see. Kay, do you mind reading our Hebrew Bible Old Testament scripture today? Not Kay, Shelby. Shelby, do you mind reading that?
I do not mind. Good morning.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, let me get liturgy pulled up and we'll get started.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Today is the feast of Saint Gaetan, born in Italy in 1480. Wasn't ordained to the age of 36. Shortly after, he began to speak out about corruption in the church and immoral behavior amongst clergy. who often took parishioners' money without offering care in return. He met with the Pope to express his concerns before reestablishing an order known as the Oratory of Divine Love, which focused on spiritual healing and the work of active ministry. In 1540, he founded a bank dedicated to helping the impoverished and addressing income inequality. He is the patron saint of Argentina, the unemployed, job seekers, and good fortune. Greetings. Today we draw a circle, not of exclusion, but of inclusion.
Our God has revealed that God's nature is love.
And the glory of God is a human being fully alive.
We come to be students of love and of life.
To learn and to teach, to share the wisdom of our ancestors.
Draw near and let us break together the bread of life.
The Canticle of Hannah 1, 1 Samuel 2, 1 through 10. Hannah prayed and she said, "My heart exalts in the Holy One of old. My horn is lifted up in my God.
My mouth opens wide against my enemies, for I will rejoice in my victory."
Second of first. I'm sorry. There is none holy like the Most High, none besides you.
There is no rock like our God.
Speak proudly no more, multiplying pride, nor let arrogance come from your mouth.
For the ageless God is a God of knowledge, and by God deeds are accounted.
The bows of the mighty are broken, yet the feeble gird on warrior strength.
Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, yet those who were hungry are well fed.
She who was barren was birthed 7 children, and yet she who has many children languishes.
The Creator of all kills and gives life, brings down to Sheol and raises up.
Gracious One makes poor and makes rich, brings low and also lifts up.
God raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from heaps of human waste to seat them with nobles and inherit a seat of honor.
For to the Creator belongs the pillar of the earth, and on them God has set the world.
God will guard the feet of the faithful who belong to God, while the wicked perish in shadow. For it is not by might that one prevails.
The Holy One of Sinai, those who strive against God shall be shattered. God thunders against them from heaven.
The fount of justice will judge the ends of the earth. God will give strength to God's ruler and exalt the power of the anointed of God.
1 Samuel 1, 19 through 28. Hannah and Elkanah rose early in the morning and bowed down and worshipped before the Holy One of old. Then they turned back and went to their house at Ramah. Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Holy One remembered her. And it was with the turning of the days that Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son. She called his name Samuel, God hears. For she said, "From the God who hears have I asked him." Now the man Elkanah went up along with his whole household to offer to the Holy One the yearly sacrifice, and on account of a vow. Yet Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, "Until this child is weaned, then I will bring him. Then he may be seen in the presence of the Most High and remain there perpetually. I will present him as a Nazirite in perpetuity for all the days of his life. For all the days of his life." Her husband Elkanah said to her, "Do what is best in your eyes. Stay until you have weaned him. May the faithful God establish the words of your mouth." So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. And she took him up with her after she had weaned him, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a jug of wine. Hannah brought him to the house of the ever-living God at Shiloh, and the boy was just a little boy. Then they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the boy to Eli. And Hannah said, "My Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman." And they brought I am the woman, the one who was standing, I beside you in the place to pray to the God who hears. For this boy I prayed, and the faithful God gave me my asking. what I ask from God. Therefore have I bequeathed him to the gracious God. All his days will he be a bequest to the God whose name is holy. So she left him there, and she bowed down and worshiped the faithful God.
Matthew 15:29 through 39. After Jesus had left Tyre and Sidon, he went by the Sea of Galilee, and he went up the mountain, sitting down there. Great crowds came to him, bringing with them disabled, blind, and mute people, and people missing body parts, along with many others. Then they put them at his feet, and he healed them, so that the crowd was amazed when they saw mute people speaking, people missing body parts made whole, disabled people walking, and blind people seeing. And they praised the God of Israel. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for the crowd, because they have stayed with me for 3 days now and have nothing to eat. And I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might collapse on the road. The disciples said to him, Where are we going to get so much bread in the desert as to feed so great a crowd? Jesus asked them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7, and a few small fish. Then, ordering the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples. The disciples gave them to the crowds, and all of them ate and were filled. And they took up the abundance of fragments, 7 baskets full. Those who ate were women and children, besides 4,000 men. Then, sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magadan. May God bless the hearing of this word.
Thanks be to God.
Loaves and Fishes by David White. This is not the age of information. This is not the age of information. Forget the news and the radio and the blurred screen. This is the time of loaves and fishes. People are hungry, and the one good word is bread for 1,000.
Thank you so much, everyone, for getting us started this morning. If you are watching us online, any platform, we just ask that you leave us a comment or a like so that we can count your attendance today. We're going to move into a time of prayer. And as always, this is a time of corporate prayer. So please drop your prayer requests, your praises, anything you'd like to offer into the comments, and those will be read for you. Is somebody keeping an eye on Facebook for me? Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Let's go to God in a time of prayer. Loving and gracious God, it is a strange time to live in when our fictions start to become realities. Movies and books that used to seem like a strange future now feel deeply relatable. God, every week we hear stories of disease and flood and fires and new places where our rights and our liberties are at risk. God, carrying those burdens week after week is a challenge. It is draining. It is difficult. We look to you for the places that you speak to us, for the places where you offer comfort in community, in each other, in the beauty of nature, and in the world around us. We ask that you speak to us in clear ways and show us what needs to be done. We are not just believers of the word, but doers of the word. Help us to see what our role is in the participation of your kingdom. And help us to be courageous in making our choices daily in how we live out our faith. God, we ask that you hear the praises and the requests of this community, knowing that when we tell you these things, we don't tell you anything you don't already know, but simply ask you to join with us with comfort and healing. Hear the prayers and praises of this community now.
Prayers for Teresa's mom and her surgery tomorrow.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For my dad's healing.
Lord, hear our prayer.
for my son and my partner as they recover from COVID.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Ben,
Lord, hear our prayer.
Praise for the vaccination of young children.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Thanksgiving for those who are watching us and finding us online.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Safe travels for the Powell family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those grieving loss today.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Camille's aunt, who is in hospice care, and her family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Safe travels for, go ahead.
For transgender children and adults and those seeking abortion care.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Safe travels for Rob's friend, Brandon.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For kids, teachers, and administrators as they return to school in the coming days.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For parents who have kids going back to school in the coming days.
Lord, hear our prayer.
for all those in seasons of transition and uncertainty.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Anna and her living situation.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For lonely seniors.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Paula, she takes care of her new grandchild.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those dealing with the aftermath of the floods and fires.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For our planet as the ice caps continue to melt.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For all those who serve in caregiver and caretaker roles.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Gratitude for those who are graduating this weekend.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Loving God, as we lift up the prayers of our heart, we give you thanks for a community in which we are able to share that which burdens us and that which around we feel joy and gratitude. We ask again that you just meet with us, comfort, healing, and celebration where it is warranted and needed. Help us to pray as Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your reign come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For yours is the sovereignty, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. Thank you again, everyone, for getting us started this morning, for offering your prayers and your praises. I have a 7-month-old kitten in my house who is especially wild this morning, so she's making a lot of noise. This is life in a house church. We're just in each other's lives, so I apologize if that's distracting. I want to bring a little bit gentler sermon this week. We've had some fiery ones in the last few weeks, and so that's kind of the energy I'm coming in with today. I do want to acknowledge that last week Rob preached a real banger of a sermon about the Canaanite woman, which I really enjoyed listening to later in the week after I got back into town. And in it, he tied together the events immediately before and immediately after the scene with the Canaanite woman's petition. drawing our attention to the flow of the entire story of Jesus's ministry rather than the piecemeal way we usually hear the Gospels as just these discrete, unconnected stories. I really appreciated not only the theology and textual interpretation that Rob offered, but also the way he set up this week's message as we look at this very well-known story of the feeding of the masses in Matthew. As a relatively new pastor and preacher, it's a little bit intimidating for me to pick up this passage and try to craft a fresh message around it. This story rivals the prodigal son for the award of most non-Advent related sermons preached in the history of modern Christianity. There's a joke amongst preachers that the prodigal son has been told and retold from every perspective except that of the pigs. And I would offer that this story, the feeding of the masses, has been told from every perspective except for that of the fish. So it's challenging to think of a new, intriguing take on this beloved old story. So while there are countless sermons about the feeding of the masses, there are two primary interpretations. The first is the one that most of us probably heard in Sunday school. The notion that Jesus literally took a small basket of food and magically, gracefully multiplied it to be a lot more food. This interpretation is so beloved because it's one of the many miracles that points to the divinity of Christ and his ability to do things that only a divine being could do. The second interpretation is my preferred one and the one most popular in progressive Christian circles, which is the possibility that the people in the crowd pooled their resources, fed everyone abundantly, and had a little bit left over. This interpretation is powerful because it shows what happens when the collective look out for one another and points to how the redistribution of wealth and resources benefits everyone while challenging our scarcity mindsets. It's one of the strongest cases for the Jesus was a socialist perspective, hence why it's so popular amongst progressive and liberal people of faith. I think there's a case to be made for both interpretations and some really good theological meat to chew on in both as well. But both fall victim to the temptation that we have as modern readers to read these vignettes as discrete and separate from the rest of the story, something that Rob called us out of last week and something that coincidentally, Wilda Gaffney invites us to reconsider in this week's lectionary as well. About this passage, she says, the healings in today's gospel immediately follow the healing of the Canaanite woman or girl at her mother's request. Word has gotten out. Has she become an evangelist in the space between these two verses? Gaffney's question opens up an interesting space for exploration. Is the crowd around Jesus huge because of Jesus? Or is the crowd around Jesus huge because of the testimony of the Canaanite woman and likely others who have encountered Jesus in his travels? There's one interpretation of Jesus, of God, of the divine in general, that says that all the action is on their side, that we are not only non-participants, but simply receivers of the abundance of God's love. This is the side that wants us to believe that Jesus simply touched a few loaves and fishes and turned them into a lot of loaves and fishes, and that everyone received enough and were taken care of. This is such a beautiful and trusting interpretation of the story. But unfortunately, at its extreme, it risks morphing into something like the prosperity gospel, where if we just pray hard enough, Jesus will do all the work, touch what we have, and we can just sit back and receive. What's tougher, but perhaps more compelling about the other interpretation is that it calls us to be active participants in the story, to offer up a little or a lot of what we have and be a co-creator of the divine will. So often people of faith sit around waiting and praying, assuming that God will take care of it. And I do think there's a way to read scripture in that way. And sometimes there's even a season to sit back and wait for what God's going to do. But I think there's also another way to read scripture that tells us that nothing in God's plan happens without us as participants. The loaves and fishes moment doesn't happen without people ponying up what's in their lunchboxes. And maybe that crowd doesn't happen in the first place without the bold testimony of the Canaanite woman telling her friends, no, really, he healed my daughter from afar. After I called him out, this guy's legit. Y'all should go see what he's up to. And in the same way, like we discussed a couple of weeks ago, there wouldn't be a Jesus ministry at all without the bravery of some women of means, Joanna, Susanna, and Mary Magdalene to be exact, to fund him and allow him to support to fund him and follow him and support the logistics behind the scenes. My friends in theater say that a one-person show is the hardest type of show to put on because it takes so many people to make that one particular person look good, and that person gets all the credit when the show is a success. There really isn't a Jesus story without the people around Jesus. And I think that's probably still true today. I love that Gaffney pairs the familiar loaves and fishes passage with the Hebrew Bible passage about Hannah. At first glance, this is a seemingly innocuous passage about Hannah giving birth, weaning, and offering a sacrifice for her child. However, like most biblical passages, there's a lot more going on under the surface. Gaffney points out that Hannah's agency in how she worships solo without her husband, which wouldn't have been unheard of or shameworthy at the time, but was certainly unusual given the patriarchal family and religious practices at the time. But the cool thing about Hannah is that she's a doer. She does what's right for her child, and what feels like is in alignment with God's will. While she does pray and worship, she doesn't sit back and wait for something to happen. She praises God while taking action. She's decisive in her action and recognizes that she has a responsibility in what she's asking God to do for her family, and for her people. It's kind of an understatement at this point to say that we're living through difficult and unprecedented times. And frankly, I'm kind of tired of saying it, and you might be tired of hearing it. As much as I strive to be Christ-like as I hear about yet another story about a mass shooting or a climate change related natural disaster or the removal of yet another civil liberty, there are days when being like Christ feels a little too lofty for a realistic day of living out my faith at this point in history. So I'm coming to believe that there are seasons in which we're called to be more like the co-creators of the story. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, to be like Mary Magdalene, pointing people to the miracle of Christ. To be like Hannah, who gets up and does what needs to be done, giving thanks as she does. To be like the Canaanite woman, who calls out inappropriate behavior where she sees it, then has the grace to go forward and hype up the guy who ultimately did the right thing. And to be like the thousands of people who helped feed each other that day with bread and fish, willing to let go of my scarcity myths and trust that there's enough for everyone. And ultimately to trust that the miracles of Jesus don't happen in just these discrete, big, flashy moments, but in one big, ongoing, all-connected, everlasting story in which we are all participants. So that's what I have for you today. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I remember as a kid, having this sermon preached at me, and hearing what the crowd did to deserve the fish, was basically just stay and sit and be still and listen. And you can understand why pastors would like that interpretation. If you show up every Sunday, you might get unlimited food. Only not really.
If you just sit there and be good, well, you'll get what you need.
But I remember the first time Tony preached his sermon about this, and that was honestly the first time I ever even considered that it was the crowd that brought all the food. I remember I was sitting, it was at the Sparks house, and it was a few years ago, and you preached that sermon to us, and I was just like, whoa. and now I want to look at every Bible story that way and be like, so I'm sitting here looking at the beginning of the story now and wondering well, what's another way that he could have helped somebody who was missing a limb, maybe he did regrow a limb, but that would be cool. But I'm also reading, or I just finished reading Octavia Butler's, it's one of her Lilith's Brood novels. And it's about these aliens that come to Earth and fix all humanity's genetic problems, just because they want to be a part of their genetic diversity. And I don't know, that seems like this sort of Jesus could be like that. Anyway.
It's interesting when people talk about fixing all of our problems. There's this Netflix documentary I watched called My Octopus Teacher. It's about this guy on the coast of Southern Africa who was just feeling depressed, and he ended up finding this octopus that he kind of like fell in love with. Like if you really watch it, it's kind of creepy because he really loved this octopus. But there's a part in the documentary where the octopus is attacked by a shark, and he wants to do everything in his power to help that octopus, but he realizes that if he interferes, kind of like the prime directive. Here we go with Star Trek memorabilia again. It's kind of like the prime directive. Like if I can't interfere with what nature is going on, so like when I see like people talk about like with Octavia Butler with like fixing all our genetic anomalies, like even the way that medicine has advanced right now, and the negative impact that it has had on this planet. We are overcrowded because we're living too long. When you really, really think about it, I know that sounds morbid and crazy, but because of the limited resources and just the fact that we are not Adam, we are terrible caretakers of this planet. Like fixing all of our problems and making sure everybody got enough to eat. It sounds good in theory, but like some of us are supposed to die. But anyway, Dave actually gave me the background for that sermon, Megan, and I never liked the feeding of the 5,000 story. Like I never ever that it was just like, so is Jesus like Doctor Strange? Like what? How does this even make sense? Like how do you even and think about it? Even in ancient times, like how do you even conceptualize? Like even like think about our cell phones now. Like literally when the flip phone, those Nokias came out, they were like the Star Trek versions of the communicators. We go with Star Trek again. And like we made fiction into reality. So like I don't the whole thing about this replicator Jesus with this fish never made sense to me. But we also have also talked about how even when you look at the problems that this country face, we have a bunch of people who claim to be Christians who are living in a sense of lack. Like there's scarcity, there's not enough. When you look at all these white supremacists, when you look at all these preppers, they're all thinking like there is not enough. So I have to hoard. And all these stories, when you think about it, there have been several stories about this when we look at some of our most popular stories from the Bible. Even with Jesus, with God bringing down manna for the children of Israel, he told them like, okay, get enough. That's why I like the Lord's Prayer where it says, give me the bread I need for the day. Like I just need that bread. That's what God told the children of Israel when they were in the wilderness. Just take what you need for the day. Because I'll bring more tomorrow. And on Saturday, I want you to get a double portion because I'm not giving y'all anything on Sunday because I need the day off because y'all getting on my nerves. So like when we really realize that because of our faith, because of who God is and what she does, like we have enough. And it's enough for people to share. And that theme also comes out in any invasion movie, like the Invasion series I'm watching on Apple TV right now. Like literally, when the aliens come, like people are gonna start hoarding things and we're gonna start acting crazy. And like we have to believe that God is no short of his word, that he will provide for us. But when we don't do that, we make all types of mistakes. And it just puts us in it's why we're where we are now. It's actually why, because the thing I love about the loaves and fishes, and I hate that word because it reminds me of the Handmaid's Tale, their grocery store. But the beauty about that is like Jesus takes that fish from the lunch, and he said he takes the fish and bread, he divides it, and he didn't chop it up, he didn't make it magical. He literally pass it around, and people are like, oh, all hell didn't break out. Maybe I can bring my food out because we're not in the Walking Dead series. But there is enough for everybody. And we just realize that we be living in a better place right now.
Thank you for that. Rob?
So I really, really love actually I don't know, I want both interpretations, right? I want them both at the same time. And what actually occurs to me is that is probably what the experience was actually like for the people who were there. Because if you do have food on you and you see that this is unfolding, you should feel prompted to share, right? And I mean, I go back to, like, you know, turning the water into wine. Like, I'm on board with Jesus performing miracles. I just am. So I think it's interesting to think about the idea that, you know, the first time Jesus feeds a multitude, and they're all sort of like, whoa, is this happening? Right? There's this sort of connection between the idea that Jesus is encouraging people to share what they have, and then it turns out there's enough. Do they know why there's enough? Was there enough because we all brought enough? Was there enough because there was some miraculous multiplication of what we brought? We don't know. We just know that we got enough to eat and there was some left over, right? And if the first time that happens, so now this is a story. So now here, you know, with this feeding of 4,000 and then some in Galilee, we have, again, you know, you can imagine that there's some anticipation here. Why have people been here for 3 days? Are they wanting to see this miracle again, right? And what does that symbolize about the bigger picture, about changing the scarcity mindset and revealing that there's enough? People want to see that miracle, and even I think, you know, want to be part of it, right? So again, you know, I love, like I said last week, I love that this time Jesus does it on his own initiative and says, you know what we should do? And, you know, he wants to do it again. He wants to see it happen again. He thought it was cool the first time. He thinks it'll be cool this time, right? So whatever the relationship is between people sharing what they've got and it being miraculously multiplied to be enough, I love how much that embodies the trust that we have to have in God to escape the scarcity mindset. Like, that's what's being dramatized in the large scale here, is that you can escape the scarcity mindset, that God has our back, right? Just share. I mean, and that, I think it depicts the real import of that language from the Lord's Prayer about, give us, you know, today the bread we need for today. So anyway, yeah, I really want both.
Well, what I love about that is there's a sense of, like, one way or another will be provided for, right? Whether it's through divine, magical, like mystical grace, or the fact that we've already been provided for and there's already enough, and, like, you just got to, like, pull it out of the cabinet and share it.
Right. It's like the ambiguity itself is there to encourage us to trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Something you said that I can circle back around to, because I want to get to Shelby, is Gaffney has some speculation about what happened in those 3 days that these people were hanging out. We're not told that Jesus was teaching during that time, just that they were there. Like, everybody was there and there was some healing going on. And so it was probably less like lecture hall and more like a healapalooza, you know, people just sort of vibing together for a few days. And then at the end of that, there was still plenty left over for everyone. So that's a whole other tangent. Shelby, you've had your hand up for a little bit.
Yeah, well, Megan she remembers where she was when she first heard this perspective. I will as well, because I was today years old in this moment when I heard this for the first time. And I'm kind of like Rob, I kind of want both interpretations, but I think what really hit me, Melissa, when you said that there's seasons where, you know, we kind of have to just recognize our own, not necessarily limitations, but that's how it landed with me. And where that went in my brain was at, like, this week, for example, I've been extremely exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, just like doing too much, right? From working all these hours, being a caregiver at home, full-time doctoral student, people needing me, volunteering for stuff, doing this, da, 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 da. And I realized, like, I can only do so much. Melissa, you can only do so much. Megan can, Rob can, Tony can, Kay, Camille, Teresa, Chris, we can all only do so much. But together, we can make amazing changes. I am finite. My energy is finite. My resources are finite. But if we pull everything together, just like they did with the 5,000. I pulled out, somebody pulled out a sandwich, somebody pulled out some chips, whatever the case may be. And that's just kind of what I'm present to, is the fact that the food is a symbol of all of our resources, whether it is money, whether it is time, well, not time, but energy, knowledge, all of those resources together collectively are what is so powerful. And then I will also add, Tony, the thought that you had about like how we have progressed so much in this world from a scientific standpoint. Like, we progressed medicine so far that, now the planet's overrun. We have more people than we should. And that is actually true. And I'll say to you that we have gotten to the point in healthcare, like, we're so good at keeping people alive, yet we don't even know what to do with them. Like, for example, you guys hear me every week, or most weeks, I'll ask for prayer for lonely seniors, because we have a generation of people who have outlived, the expectation, and society doesn't even know how to handle them. Like, we push them over to the side because, well, we've kept you alive and you're still alive and you're 105 and, you're fairly healthy, but we don't know how to help you even contribute anymore, because all we know how to do is keep you alive. So that's a whole nother thought process for another day. But ultimately, Melissa, appreciate the fact that you brought this perspective for me for the first time to hear it, because it's going to help me when I move forward with wondering, like, how do I help contribute when I'm feeling like I'm at the bottom of my barrel? I just contribute what I can and trust that together we'll all make it happen.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. I mean, there's such a great question embedded in what you just said about, like, what does abundance actually mean? Like, we can give you an abundance of years, but are we giving you an abundance of belonging, an abundance of, a place in community at the age of 105? Like, there's, like, what is God's abundance and grace actually look like across the lifespan? I think thank you. I appreciate all that. I know we've got a couple comments in the chat, and then Rob, you got your hand up next.
Let's see here. Comments. Most of them are funny. Rob says it takes all of us, and God is in it with us, and he really is. Teresa, love her commentary. She says, sometimes I think we don't see how cool this is because of our abundance and our ingratitude for it. Like Melissa said, the story is proof of Jesus' divinity. This is a big deal story, no matter which interpretation you go with. And in part because the story made it to the official record. Those people were grateful for that picnic. I think about how people went bananas at the beginning of COVID, and that in a society with unheard of abundance, people went out the deep end hoarding, and then how much of their hoards rotted. And well, even in a more everyday example, while we throw away tons of food, while other people literally go to bed other people literally have to beg to get people to share some food or to get housing. We let our produce rot in the crisper because we forget about it. If we were grateful, I think we'd share. But instead, we're kind of numb to how rich we are. Amen. Kay, to Rob's point, a huge amount of trust was needed for that whole situation to work. Fast forward to today, we don't even trust our own family or friends, let alone strangers. No wonder people were homeless and going hungry and needing things, because we don't trust each other enough to take care of each other. Before Rob says it's coming, I was going to say, like, we kind of miss church on the way to church. And I think this is a good example of that, because the true miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 was the sharing. Like, you got 5,000 people who don't know each other, they're probably not from the same tribe, same villages. And we look at the food, like the miraculous loaves and fishes as the miracle. And the miracle was the fact that they were able to share. It's just like with the day of Pentecost. We look at the miracle as everybody talking in one tongue. No, people were scared to death when Jesus was murdered. So they went into hiding for 50 days. Here's the word Pentecost. The miracle for me was the fact that they found the strength to come together and work together, because as Shelby said, we are finite. We can't do it all by ourselves. It takes a collective. If you want to call it socialism, so be it. But we can't be everything to all people. It takes all of us to get anything done. And Melissa, I love the fact that you made the point about how, you know, the one person play with Jesus being everything. No, Jesus needed us. Like, it's a symbiotic relationship. And I'm done.
Thank you for that. Rob, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I just really wanted to affirm what Shelby was saying. That it feels really close to my heart, because I mean, my whole life I've been the person who feels like if something was going to move, I was going to have to push it. And so, you know, it's been a personal growth journey for me to work on that, right? And so I know, you know, something we've talked about a lot in church is, you know, knowing what movie we're in. And I kind of feel like what Shelby's talking about is recognizing what lane you're in. And you know, the lane you're in can change, right, with circumstances and time. But like, there's going to be a lane, right? There's something for you to do, and there's other things that aren't necessarily yours to do. And that's why we have words like discernment, I suppose. So I just wanted to point to a movie that I love. This is not a Star Trek reference, although I will say that when we talk about healing and a word getting out, I did instantly think about the old lady from Star Trek 4 that was on dialysis, and McCoy was horrified. He's like, dialysis? What is this, the Dark Ages? He gives her a pill. She grows a new kidney. We later see her going down the hall. Doctor gave me a pill. I grew a new kidney. That's how all those people ended up in Galilee. So, but anyway, the movie that I love, and it is a deeply weird movie. It is probably not for everyone, but I love it, is Darren Aronofsky's Noah movie. Because in that we see, so I mean, the world is just like absolutely laid waste. Like, you know, you really grok why God is just so fed up and like, well, this was a mistake. Y'all are hot garbage. So when Noah, you know, has this task of like, okay, time to build a boat, right? But there's no trees, there's nothing to build a boat with. So it's like the faithfulness of Noah is to build a boat. It's still up to God to provide trees. And that's depicted really beautifully in the movie. And that, I just love that image of being in a lane. Like, okay, God, I will be faithful, but you know exactly what I can handle. Like, I can't make trees. That one's going to be on you. And so anyway, I really, really love that image, and Shelby made me think of it.
That's good. I like that. I mean, our movie club list is growing. Eventually, we're just going to have to sit down and watch all these movies together. Megan, you fly your hand next.
Yeah, I mean, I think the miracle here is sort of Jesus. I mean, if it's just Jesus saying, you know, magic fish, magic fish, magic fish, you know, then, you know, when everybody leaves, no more magic fish, you know, and when Jesus ultimately gets killed, no more magic fish. So there's no movement. But if he can show these people that they can rely on each other, you know, that's where the movement comes from. And you can see why he would do this more than once, you know, in the New Testament. Like, you know, going to a place where other people, you know, any kind of place, like I like going to anime conventions, and we have a Welsh course that we've been to a bunch of times, and you know, going to a place where people think about or enjoy the same thing that you do is it's really healing and it's fun. But imagine if the thing that these people thought was important was, you know, society. Like, this is sort of a society convention. And you can kind of understand why people kept on with it after Jesus was gone, and, you know, after they understood that they could be killed for this. If this is why, you know, if they got to have this experience of like everybody caring about each other and society. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Shelby.
So Melissa kind of eloquently pulled out of my brain what I was thinking about. If the magic was Jesus handing out the fish, what happened when he was gone? What were the people left with? So I think that this brings home for me the fact that it wasn't that interpretation. It was him getting people to see that I'm laying the foundation, but you guys have to carry it forward. Like, this is up to you to do as a people, to build kingdom and to take care of each other. And Rob talked about the lanes. Yes, that's it. We all have a lane. I think that's the part that we sometimes forget, right? And we want to be in your lane, and your lane may not be my lane, which is probably why when we are trying to carry on the work of Jesus, why we sometimes feel frustrated. I mean, there could be plenty of other reasons, but maybe because if I'm in the wrong lane, if I'm trying to do the part that I shouldn't do, that's not my thing in that moment, maybe if I get in my lane and I stay true to my lane and I stay true to my gifts at that time, and I do that and I work that and I grow in that, good. And then when it's time for my lane to change, my lane changes. But at the end of the day, we all have a lane, and it's not sitting to the side watching somebody else do it. It is all of us doing it together. Somebody's got to bake that birthday cake that Chris talked about last week. Somebody's got to slice it. Somebody's got to get the plates out. Somebody's got to hand it out. Somebody's got to make sure everyone has a slice, all of that. So if we each play our part, it works.
Yes. Yeah, and there's kind of a question of responsibility there. Like, once you know your lane, you are responsible for running in it. You are responsible for doing your job. I love that. Thank you, Tony.
Oh yeah, I want to lift up Camille. She said Jesus does mention that these things you shall be able to do and more. That's the other thing about. I hate when people say, "Well, I'm just gonna pray about it," like, and then what you gonna do? Because like all of them, Jesus told the disciples that the things that he did, you can do this too. You just got to have the right amount of faith. They could have changed water to wine. They could have calmed those seas. They could have did all the things that Jesus did if they had enough faith. So like, again, what did Jesus leave behind? He left behind a blueprint that they should be following, because once the fish and bread are gone, what are you going to do now? The other thing is, and I brought about, I talked about this when I did the sermon, was the fact that, okay, let's just say it is magical, Oprah Jesus with a fish of you and fish of you and fish of you. Like, at some point, you gotta believe Jesus knew that line was ending. Like at 4,998, there were only 2 more people in that doggone line. Why were there 7 to 12 baskets of food left? Like, I think Jesus was a green Jesus. Like, Jesus wasn't about waste. So like, having excess, like, and then when you talk about the people who talk about this in the prosperity gospel, they really emphasize that, oh, it was over in abundance. It was wasteful. They didn't have refrigerators, folks. That food was not going to keep overnight. You want some day old fish? Like, seriously? Like, make it make sense. So like, again, this like magical Jesus people keep talking about, we miss church trying to get to church. Like, we do it all the time. So let's see, there was let's see, there's another comment. Rob says, we joke about staying in your lane, but really the exhortation is to recognize your lane and drive in it. Absolutely. Don't just sit at the side of the road. Shelby said, child, don't get me started about just pray about it. Yeah, I hate that. Kay says, we need to stop worrying about other folks' lanes. Woo, child, tell the Karens about that. Quit looking over there and worrying about you and worry about yourself. If we all spent more time perfecting our own calling or lane, we might be better off. We would definitely be better off. Like, too many people got their minds and hands in too many other people's business. It's the same thing with this abortion thing. I truly feel like if you're not born with a uterus, you should shut up. This ain't your fight. This is not your fight. It's just not. I'm done.
A whole word. Thank you for that. I circle back around. I've shared this before, but my favorite question from Suzanne Stabile, who's an Enneagram teacher, is what's mine to do? And I love that question because it is both editing and expansive. It's like, what's mine to do? This is, that's not mine. So let me put that aside. But what's mine to do? okay, what's mine to do? Like, what do I need to like take on and actually be responsible for? That's been one of my most important spiritual
You know
questions.
what, Melissa, the other thing about that, I have a sales background as well. And some of these sales seminars we used to go to, there was this one video series called Get That Monkey Off Your Back. And it's literally a video of people having tasks, and the tasks were a real monkey, and they would give the monkey to other people. And you were like, that ain't your monkey. So like, get this monkey off my back. Like this is and staying in your lane also means knowing when not let people burden you down with their problems as well. So like, you know, this it's a two-way street. Like learn your lane, stay in it, drive in it, stay the course. But also don't let people offload their problems onto you, because people will do it at the drop of a hat if you're not careful. I'll be like, that's not my circus, not my clowns. You figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries.
Boundaries, the spiritual practice of boundaries. Oh my God, don't get me started. I love all this. I want to leave it open for a few more minutes for more comments or other thoughts.
I do have a thought about the leftovers from feeding the multitude. I think, you know, it's interesting that well, all right, I'll put it this way. I think if the exact amount of necessary food had been hit on the nose, right? So like you say, you know, Jesus is handing out fish, he sees the back of the line. All right, cool. We don't need to, you know, get more fish out of the magical fish basket. So when that happens, the big takeaway from the story is, and there was exactly enough, which I think doesn't really move the needle on trust, right? There was just enough for me to get mine, but only just barely. God only gives you just exactly what you need. I feel a lot of people already who are not moving in the direction they need to move as a result of that, right? So I think the leftovers, the abundance, I mean, not to rehash last week, right? But I feel like the leftovers are important as an indicator that no, really, there is enough. Like, you know, you don't need to be shoving fish in your pockets, right? Those are just going to stink later. Like there was enough and more than enough. And that's why you can trust.
Oh my gosh, that if you hoard it, it's just gonna stink later. That's a deep theological truth right there. Yeah,
Get a
well,
t-shirt.
That's a
No.
t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a t-shirt. Exactly. Add it to the list.
If your order is gonna stink.
That's very good. You know, Rob, what I'm put to mind of is a few months ago when we talked about the miracle at the wedding and just this bananas amount of wine that Jesus created. I mean, it was like 700 gallons or something. Like, I think the abundance is important. Like the too muchness, the enoughness, the like leftoverness is really important as we read these miracles. There's always like a whole lot more than what was needed when Jesus performs a miracle. I think that's an important truth. I think we've got another couple
One
of
more comment. Yeah, let's see, who is this? Oh, Teresa. Sidebar. I think the Noah movie gets so much hate for also being a weird, different interpretation of a well-known kids' Bible story. It takes this story we sanitize so much, we make it into toddler toys and makes us really think. I think we're supposed to think and look at things from a different perspective. Absolutely. Oh, and there's another comment from Kay. It says people are too quick to try to tell others what their lane is. Just because you look like you should be an expert in some areas doesn't mean that you are. Think about singers who are. Think about the singer who people. The singer
I
people
think
think is
people
awesome.
assume.
Yeah, assume are awesome, but that is not. The other thing about that is this like management one-on-one. Like everybody takes that great social worker in your organization and want to make them like the social work manager, where they're excellent at helping people. They're horrible at managing other people. I've seen this happen too many times, like way too many times. Like it's just a train wreck ready to happen. Just because they look like they can do it or they've been doing a good job at it, that means you could translate that into a managerial part. And Megan says this. Megan, go ahead and tell your own comment. You got a mic.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about it puts me in mind of like the big lie, which is God doesn't give you more than you can handle. This is like the other side of the fish gun. But I mean, that's obviously not true. I think the lesson that we need to take away is you can handle everything better as a community.
All right, one more. Teresa, I've never thought about the fish and bread and connecting it to the next day writing manner until you said that, Tony. But now I think probably we're supposed to think about the hoarding issue. And Rob, to your point about there's a difference between extra and then just like overabundance. Like I think overabundance feeds into greed and the prosperity gospel narrative. Like I do think you're right. If it was just enough, we just made it. So it means we can't let these immigrants in the next time. Or, like it's like pie. But I think that there's a difference between having enough and then just having so much that it's gonna go to waste. That's really my point, and I don't think I articulated it that way.
It's actually one of my favorite, like oddly specific details of these stories, that we know exactly the number of loaves, exactly, we don't know the exact number of the fish, a few small fish, but then like we get the number of baskets, right? We know exactly how many baskets of leftovers there were. So like, yeah, it's, I mean, I assume they're not like little bitty baskets, but it's not like a great big pile, of just.
Can I do the case petty comment and then we can end this?
Sure.
She says, correction. I was referencing the good singer who people think would be a good preacher. So he or she suddenly is thrust into that role without having any calling or gifts. Sis or brother, this is not your lane. Kim Burrell. I said it. And I'll say it again.
Okay. Now we're naming names. I love it.
I'm calling folks out.
Calling folks out this morning. Shelby, we'll get one more comment and I'm going to take us back to the liturgy.
Yeah, those two petty over there. We're gonna leave petty right. Petty right. Megan made me think about when she said in her comment about God doesn't put more on you than you can bear. And she's like, no, which that's another shirt as well. I think where we have maybe taken a wrong turn is that we look at that you as singular, you, when really maybe that you is meant to be community. Oh, Melissa, snap it off. Like maybe we have interpreted that you incorrectly the entire time, because that is one of the things. Like I want to fight when people say that. Oh, God doesn't put more on you than you can bear. What? No, and that's what leaves people angry and frustrated with this God that we portray to be in that way. So anyway, I think you is something we need to kind of re-examine. Thank you for that, Megan.
Ooh, that feels like
that's a whole nother sermon.
Yeah, that's a good note to leave it on. I love that. Oh, thank you all so much. This was, as always, a fun and enlivening discussion. So I'm going to take us back to the liturgy and we'll close it out.
Whew, yeah, this is great. Okay. Oh Lord, open my eyes that I may see the needs of others. Open my ears that I might hear their cries. Open my heart so that they need not to be without succor. Let me not be afraid to defend the weak because of the anger of the strong, nor afraid to defend the poor because of the anger of the rich. Show me where love and hope and faith are needed, and use me to bring them to those places. And so open my eyes and my ears that I may this coming day be able to do some work of peace for thee. Amen.
God is love. Nothing is wasted. All things shall be well. Go in peace.
Thank you all so much. That nothing is wasted hit me differently today. So love it. As always, wonderful to be with all of you. Again, if you're watching us online, please leave us a like or a comment so we can record your attendance. Next week, Tony is preaching for us. Is that right? And I will be out of town again, so will leave it in your capable hands. So we look forward to seeing you then. If you're on the Zoom, hang out with us for a second and go in peace.